When he finally awoke the next morning, he found that the Mathilde had weighed anchor and sailed away. He hardened his heart against the disappointment. His only thought was, "Idiot, it serves you right. You know beachside romances are losing propositions." Yeah, congratulations. You emotionally invested in someone whose forwarding address is the horizon. What did you think this was? A Hallmark Channel regatta? Sea Dog was lying on her stomach, front and back legs extended, head resting on the deck, staring at the spot where she had last seen the Mathilde. She was not doing her usual happy call-to-nature dance this morning. She was visibly sad. Now and then, she would raise her head, look at Cap'n Jack, and whine. When even the dog is judging your love life, it's over. Cap'n Jack had never seen her behave this way. She was always the one who dragged him out of his dark moods. Today would be especially difficult for both of them. One of them would have to soldier on and wait for the other to catch up. It could happen. One of them will bounce back first. My drachmas are on the one who pees outside. The four were stirring and poking suspiciously into the MRE packages for breakfast. He started the coffee brewing. Maybe the daily chores and sailing would be enough distraction. Maybe a happy hour with Michael Bean at Marina Quay would pull them both out of another blue funk. For the first time in 3 months, he craved a Heineken. Nothing says personal growth like relapse by beer. Sea Dog half-heartedly barked, roused herself, and headed for the dinghy. There was still the call-to-nature problem. He told the four that they would get underway when he returned. They were in no hurry. The effects from the previous day's beach outing and the late evening partying at Foxy's were still very obvious. Even 18-year-olds overdo things now and then, but a short nap in the sun with a friendly wind would revive them. The dinghy's engines sputtered to life with one pull, and off to the beach they went. Downcast, neither he nor Sea Dog paid much attention to the details around them. The placid azure water, the verdant hills of Great Harbour, and the lovely beach with its ramshackle bar were all too familiar scenes to the two companions. This was their normal movie set. He just hadn't expected it to become a breakup scene. Same scenery, different emotional damage. Sea Dog was the first to notice the one small change in this serene scene. Her tail started wagging as he had never seen it wag, and the whine was replaced by a smile and a happy bark. Sitting on the dock, wearing an extra-large Foxy's t-shirt, long bare legs dangling in the water, sat a lone strawberry-blonde Celtic wayfarer. Her first comment as he tied up the dinghy was, "Where can a girl get a cup of coffee this time of morning?" Not hello, not how are you, straight to caffeine like a real adult. I respect her. Sea Dog jumped into her lap and almost spilled them both into the water. At once, the dog was torn between nature and nurture. She wanted both at the same time. She'd head toward the beach, stop, come back, jump into Rose's lap, snuggle, then head for the beach again. Then repeat. A full sketch comedy routine in fur. Finally, Ro walked to the edge of the beach where the dog could take care of her business. Meanwhile, trailing behind this piece of theatre was a slightly bemused Cap'n Jack. His emotions had been whipsawed over the last 2 days, and he had 1,000 pressing questions for the Celtic lady. But then, summoning up his limited Italian, he thought, "Por chi? Demanda. Por chi?" Why ask why? Let this little drama play on a while. Living in the twilight has its advantages. There is only the romantic present. Besides, her options were limited. She had places to go, and he had the only horse in town. It could happen. Trapped on an island with the only guy who owns a boat, what could possibly go wrong? "I know a place that has the premier coffee in the BVI," he shouted. She turned from her romp with Sea Dog, smiled, reached into the small bag she carried, and produced a collapsible cup. "I come prepared, Cap'n." Of course she has her own collapsible cup. This woman travels like a Pinterest board. He continued, "Any other contraband in that wench's ditty bag you be a-carryin'?" More laughter. She produced a Lancome makeup bag and the smallest of black bikinis. "Will this contraband pass inspection?" His one reaction, "Oh, great. Butt floss." "Buddy, you're complaining out loud about butt floss. Are you new here?" He recovered sufficiently. "What, no creamer?" She hugged him politely, kissed him lightly on both cheeks, took his hand in hers and said, "I prefer my coffee undilute." His voice cracked as he pointed toward the dick. "The coffee awaits on yon bark." Sea Dog herded the two back to the dock and into the dinghy. As they motored back to the ship, he peppered her with questions. "Are your friends going to anchor in Marina Cay today?" She lightly stroked Sea Dog's neck, nestled in her lap, and nodded. "You knew Sea Dog would need a pee this morning?" Another nod. "Did you bring any food with you?" Both she and Sea Dog looked at him in disbelief. "Well, girlfriend, do I have a treat for you?" She replied, "If you have food on board, I have a treat for you, Monsieur." It could happen, and it usually ends with dessert and regret. Either way, she was in for a surprise. Ship was delighted to see an acquaintance from the past come aboard. Although her previous mistress did speak unkindly of, and often about, Roe, she was on the best people to call list when in port. The class of the peasants' clientele just went up in her estimation. But there was still that dog and those girls. The four recognized Roe immediately from the previous evening and launched into traditional greetings. "Good morning. How are you?" But shock upon shock, Roe launched into perfect conversational Japanese. The four were surprised and happy to speak in their native language with her. Cap'n Jack, slack-jawed, watched and listened in amazement. Coffee was forgotten. "She's gorgeous. She sails. She speaks Japanese. And you've got MERS. This is going to go great." It was obvious that some of Roe's history was left out of the previous night's discussions. She was, indeed, becoming more interesting by the moment. He decided to get on with the day's sailing. After winching the dinghy into its berth, he uncovered the mainsail in preparation for unfurling once they had motored past Betty Brown Rock. He made sure any and all doors and cabinets were shut tight. Finally, he poured the steaming coffee into 2 white seaworthy warming carafes. He brought the carafes and 6 Sloop Yost Van Dyke BVI inscribed cups, retail $11.99, up to the center cockpit. He yelled, "Coffee's up!" 5 caffeine-starved souls sat down for a friendly chat, a cup of Java, and a lovely day in paradise. Cap'n Jack was largely forgotten in all this. That suited him. He was happy to do the sailing and turn the social agenda over to Roe. She was in her element. Besides, he was much happier watching her as she carelessly played with a lock of hair that the wind used to tickle her face. Sea Dog placed her head in Roe's lap. Whenever Roe ceased stroking her neck, Sea Dog would raise her snout and nudge the offending hand. Even the dog has better boundaries. "Pet me, or I sue." From the cockpit, Cap'n Jack started the motor, raised the anchor chain, backed out of the anchorage, and came about for the voyage out of Great Harbour and into the Channel. Roe volunteered to steer while he unfurled the sails. He winched them into place and was preparing to take control of the wheel when Roe expertly killed the motor and turned the dick into the wind. Even the telltales behaved properly. She asked, "Will you be tacking once we are well into the channel?" More surprises. He nodded. She said, "Jolly good. I love a good tack, don't you?" Since navigating and tacking were two skills in which Cap'n Jack was seriously deficient, he could only smile and shake his head. This man is one gust of wind away from being exposed as a fraud on his own boat. "Have you sailed these waters before?" he asked. "Oh yes. Father used to bring us here during school holes. I have a logbook full of my exploits at the tiller." A thought crossed his mind. "Now, I normally don't charge passage fees to a damsel in distress, but you volunteered to be stranded." She looked at him curiously. Then he made the suggestion. "Would you care to play the part of captain today?" "Oh, I couldn't do that. You don't know my sailing skills from the Queen of England's." He replied, "Well, I'll keep an eye on you." She was delighted. "What fun, yes. Marina Kay, correct?" "Yep." He watched her perform her first and second tacks into the wind. He'd seen others tack before, and satisfied that she knew her stuff, he went below to perform his daily cleaning tasks. Now and then, he'd hear the winches turn and feel the ship list a bit more as she adjusted the sails. Roe was definitely not an amateur. Why did he trust her with the dick? He had never entrusted any passenger with so much freedom and responsibility. He knew part of it was the way Sea Dog treated her. Sea Dog was always friendly and cuddly, but she had attached herself to the Celtic. Of course, Captain Jack never cuddled with Sea Dog the way Roe was cuddling her now. It could happen, but if the dog leaves you for the girl, that's a sign from the universe. He tried to steel his heart to protect it from an eventual hurt, but it was an impossible task. Having finished his cleaning duties and written in his log, he ascended into the cockpit to take stock of the ship's progress. Tortola was sliding by on the starboard side, and the smaller Beef Island would be next. The four had surrounded Roe. She was explaining every move she made in both Japanese and English. They were taking notes, talking with each other, and talking with Roe. This was much like they had done with Captain Jack the day before. The four must have told her that one of the purposes of the trip was to receive instruction in nautical English. She gave him a nice try look, but she smiled. He winced. Uh-oh. "Well, it was only a small part of the trip," he consoled himself, "and I did give them a discount." She held up a package of MREs, pointed to them, and laughed out loud. He held out his arms, shrugged, feigned innocence, and laughed with her. "So, what do you think of the coffee so far?" he asked. "The coffee is still brewing, but the talk with the girls is getting even better," she replied. "They blame you for their new hernias. Your efforts at speaking in Japanese were really quite funny." "And they think you and Sea Dog make quite a pair," he confessed. "Well, if I beat her often enough, she stays in line." "Oh, I can tell how much you beat her. Those invisible scars, you know." Every time a man jokes about beating a dog, a therapist gets a new boat. She was so much fun. Surely there was a catch to all of this pleasantness. "By the way," he said, "you seem to speak their language. Or is that just an act between the five of you?" She laughed. "Oh, we didn't fool you for 1 second, did we?" "Actually, I taught English in Japan for a few years, and in self-defense, I learned to speak just enough to fend off the randy boys in the nightclubs and buy food in the markets." speaking of self-defense, did you earn a black belt while you lived in Japan? Actually, no. Brown only. Great. If any pirates board us, you can be ship's security. It could happen. But pirates versus brown belt, that's a short movie. Cane Garden Bay was just off to starboard. Roe inquired, "Say, I am feeling a bit peckish." Captain Jack tilted his head. "I hope it wasn't something in the coffee." More laughter. "No, it just means that I am hungry, and I like to cook. Surely you must tire of the wholesome diet that you are on. Could we stop and get some decadent fresh things?" "We could stop at Reimer's and pick up some goodies. And there is Mrs. Klein's bakery next door. My treat." Defeated in navigation and diet, he surrendered. A cooked meal was nothing to refuse. He offered a soft protest. "I hate to upset the ship's discipline where meals are concerned, but maybe just this once?" In typical British fashion, she responded, "Brilliant. Now, I wonder if they have a proper wine cellar." Of course, she expertly pulled the Dick into the bay, and he supervised the setting of the anchor chain. There were no other boats nearby, so he did not worry about the length of the chain. He took the ship's crew and passengers ashore at Cane Garden Bay. The Four and Sea Dog would explore the shops, sunbathe, and hang out until lunch was ready. Captain Jack had been shanghaied into being the cook's assistant for the noontime meal. Actually, he had asked if there was anything he could do to help. His skill set was limited. Boiling water was at the top. She immediately accepted and gave him a list of items at Reimer's. Surveying his galley cabinets in less than a minute, she turned to him and said, "Everything must go." He was sure she'd said, "Off with his head." The cell use-by dates had all passed into legend. These supplies had come with the ship 5 years ago. Any opposition would have been crushed by the steely determination of the British Empire. Quick as a wink, an extra cargo of full trash bags was hauled ashore in the dinghy. As a result of this galley raid, the purchase list contained staples: chicken, herbs, spices, fresh fruit, fresh vegetables, eggs, orange juice, skim milk, cooking oil, etc. He busied himself with the list. Since wine was the most important part of the meal, she felt she must do that herself. He protested that he had a whole cellar full of draft Royal Crown cola, but she wouldn't hear of it. Wine is the proper drink for adults at lunch. Royal Crown is suitable for the 4. She just demoted his entire beverage philosophy to children's menu. Good. When at last the purchases had been made and the last bag stored on the dinghy, she turned to him and teasingly said, "Home, James, and don't spare the horses." He pulled the cord and the engines sputtered to life. As they retraced their wake to the Dick, he spotted the Four and Sea Dog sprawled on the beach next to 4 really cute boys of the same age. The cute adjective was Rose. It looked like trouble, but she reassured him that the girls were tough as nails. The Yakuza clan their family belonged to trained their children from birth to defend themselves. "Yakuza?" she replied. "Oh, yes. Didn't you notice their butterflies?" "But I thought they were university students." "They are, you silly man. University students with 5th degree black belts and very well connected. Your reputation in Japan is going to be fabulous." He gulped. "Don't blow it now," he exhaled. "You're ferrying gangster princesses and flirting with a multilingual sailor chef. This is not a midlife crisis." This is a mini-series. They arrived at the stern of the Dick, and he passed the bags up to her. His head was still spinning over Rose's revelations about the four. Well, if pirates came aboard, he and Sea Dog would be well protected. He didn't even own a gun. Eventually, all the groceries were put away. He knew he would need to go ashore to retrieve the four and Sea Dog, so he asked if there was anything he needed to pick up while he ran this errand. She turned to him, said, "Maybe," came very close, and then kissed him full on the lips. She tasted of peaches and smelled of lavender. System overload. Now don't get any ideas just yet. You are on probation. He had not been kissed in 4 or 5 years. This was a shock to his system anyway. The kiss, plus the declaration of probation, pushed him into a mental reboot. She noticed he was in shock and in need of distraction. She handed him a knife, a towel, a cutting board, assorted vegetables, and 3 bowls. "Get to cuttin', matey," was all she said, gently pushing him toward the salon table. The lingering taste of that kiss disturbed and stayed with him. He managed to slice and dice all the vegetables without losing any fingers. A small miracle. When all was ready for cooking, she sent him ashore with a small list of forgotten items, reminded him which direction he should be going, kissed him again, and returned to her cooking duties. Now, why did she do that? It took him 4 tries to get the engine going, and he forgot to untie the dinghy. It was a good thing she'd reminded him of his proper directions, because he was in the fog of neo-puberty, complete with bad breath and pimples. This situation was becoming downright uncomfortable. What did she want? It could happen. Or he could just die, confused and aroused. Another small riot ensued when he asked the 4 to come back to the ship. They liked the company of the boys, and he was intruding. Well, they were paying for the trip. He asked the boys what they were doing the rest of the day. They were passengers on a small cruise ship anchored in the harbour. The phrase that saved the day was Marina Cay. Their ship would leave later that afternoon for an anchorage near Marina Cay. After serious negotiations, it was agreed they would all meet at the Hilltop Bar on Marina Cay for happy hour. He also mentioned shopping at Pusser's. They'd heard of the store and wanted to replenish their wardrobes. After that, it was no problem to get the 4 moving toward the dinghy. They were hungry, and Roe had promised a gourmet meal, followed by gallons of draft Royal Crown Cola. Oh boy. By the time the small company arrived back at the Dick, a somewhat perturbed Celtic cook greeted them with crossed arms and an indignant air. "The food has been ready for 30 minutes. What delayed you lot?" He said one word. "Boys." Her mouth rounded into an "Oh." "But I am sure they will tell you everything about them during lunch. They have a club date this evening for happy hour." She was impressed with this bit of information. But luncheon was ready in the salon, and it was getting cold. Lunch was a visual and gastronomic delight. Sautéed vegetables, Italian-flavoured couscous, spicy chicken marinated in salsa, and black bean salad. The meal was complemented by a fine white wine. The pièce de résistance was blueberry cheesecake served with a full-bodied French café blend coffee. all of this was followed by that finest of soft drinks. Cap'n Jack reluctantly volunteered to clean up after lunch while Roe got the ship underway. As they sailed toward Marina Cay, the four and Sea Dog sprawled underneath the boom. Roe had donned her minimalist, most feminine attire and was forward of the mast, soaking up Sol's best efforts. Cap'n Jack was at the wheel, impersonating someone in charge of the ship's passage. His mind was not focused on the channel ahead. He kept gazing at the barely attired figure that graced the front of the ship. Now and then the sails slackened, she'd look up, and he'd be forced to focus on the ship's business. He knew she knew he was a sailing fraud. Even so, now and then he turned the winches to make it sound like he knew something about tightening the sails. She would look up at the sails, then at him, and smile. It was a small thing, but he liked the way she smiled, so he did it often enough to create an intimate but unspoken conversation between the two of them. Now and then, Sea Dog, with her deck shoes, sunglasses and bandana, would march forward on an inspection tour. Roe noticed her presence only when a cold snout urgently lifted her hand from the deck. A few well-placed behind-the-ear strokes later, and Sea Dog was back sprawled among the four. Cap'n Jack drifted into a philosophical mode. The scene before him, potentially, was heaven. But what if it was only temporary? The dissolution of fragile heavens had a cost. You're basically doom-scrolling your own love life on a sailboat. At some point that afternoon, the Dick arrived outside Marina Cay. Everyone anticipated the evening's promise of fun, frolic and surprise. The four wanted to boogie with the boys. Roe was looking forward to a reunion with her four friends. Sea Dog needed a pee. Cap'n Jack was just plain anxious. He was anxious about mooring in that small anchorage. The passage was tricky. Coral reefs, small islands, the ferry dock, other yachts, the tight anchorage, and his own lack of confidence. He sweated bullets. He generally moored successfully and then recovered his composure. The recovery time depended on the number of near misses. He lowered the sails, fired up the motor, and manoeuvred through the channel. Roe, as if on cue, expertly found the mooring pole and, with signals, guided him into a safe berth for the night. As she tied the Dick to the mooring line, he tucked the sails into their storage places and stowed the ropes in the pockets next to the salon stairs. He recognized this as one of ship's favorite tricks. A poorly stowed line had hobbled him several times. This never happened to the passengers. Normally they were just thrown overboard, but never under full sail. Honestly, the boat's smarter than he is. It's sabotaging him on purpose. This was great. Safely moored, no incidents. Things were definitely looking up. No, something was bound to go wrong. The first sign came with the appearance of the Mathilde. 3 aging and matronly Valkyries motored over in the ship's dinghy to collect Roe. Without introductions and without pausing for breath, they detailed their day. "Oh, jolly good. So glad to have found you. Did you have a pleasant outing with your new friends?" "Our passage was perfectly dreadful, darling. Without you to captain our efforts, I am afraid we quarrelled quite horribly. With the aid of a few G&Ts, we've made up, of course. But Roe, darling, please don't leave us alone again." "Goodness, Roe, won't you catch your death of a cold in that scant thing?" Cap'n Jack sank into a cushion, expelled his breath, and retreated into his familiar darkness. He had caught sight of heaven, potentially. The colours had danced in his eyes, the fabric had kissed his fingertips, the sounds had been soft, the scent had been lavender. And if there was a taste, heaven had tasted of peaches. Roe introduced everyone, but he didn't catch any of their names. A hand gently found his and pulled him away from that dark place. Fair Rowena, Celtic lady of Sussex, gave him a reassuring look, turned to the Valkyries, and inquired about their plans for the evening and tomorrow. Of course, they were going to happy hour and then dinner at the island restaurant, Roe included. Afterwards, they'd have an early night and sail to Road Town Harbour in the morning for shopping and lunch at the Village Quay restaurant. Roe pondered this and said, "Have you considered sailing to Anegada?" In unison, the Valkyries cried, "Oh, darling, compared to Road Town Harbour, there really is no social on that island." But they do house some great restaurants. Can't you just imagine taking pictures of the flamingos and sea turtles? Captain Jack thought the sea turtles bit was a stretch, but he liked the direction. He could vouch for the food. After the ship he'd been on sank, he was rescued by the locals and treated to wonderful meals. For a moment, he forgot the challenges of sailing to Anegada and thought of the fabulous fish prepared in the local manner. The idea of a fish lunch on the beach with wine appealed to these Wagnerian maidens of the British Isles. It was settled. A convoy of ships would sail to the low-lying island for a day of lunch and photographs. As Cap'n Jack watched, he felt the reassuring hand of Roe on his, and the idea that she was someone to be trusted with more than his ship entered his mind. Meanwhile, a 4-footed friend's bladder was exploding, and she let both of them know with a solitary bark. Cap'n Jack turned to Sea Dog and apologised. He sprang toward the dinghy, accompanied by Sea Dog and Roe. "I'll see you on board the Matilda momentarily. They can't do this without me." The last they saw of the Valkyries was of them motoring back to their boat to prepare for the evening's fun. It was obvious they needed to talk. Sea Dog's call to nature was the perfect excuse to be alone. The minute they touched shore, she was off to mark as many spots on the beach as a full bladder could support. They both tried to speak at once and broke into laughter. He liked her laugh. She began. "We really do not know much about each other." That was true. He replied, "Well, we both know which of us is the better sailor." Their laughter disturbed Sea Dog's investigations, and she came back to give Roe a good cuddle. When the dog returned to her territorial markings, he asked the obvious question. "Why on earth are you flirting with me?" She said, "Isn't the answer obvious?" He knew he was dense about such things, but still. "You like my suave and debonair ways, do you?" he asked. She giggled. "Oh my, yes. You quite swept me off my feet that first meeting on the dock at White Beach." Ouch. "Well, then it must be the ship. Chicks dig the dick, you know." Her laugh disturbed Sea Dog again, but this time the dog stayed put. "Well, she is a handful," Roe said. This time it was his turn to laugh. He finally caught on. They were having fun. They were enjoying each other's company. They were friends. They could talk in words and body language. Whether they would become more than friends was an open question. But at this moment, friendship was the powerful opiate she gave him, and that was enough. For now, until the probation paperwork clears. "Will I see you very often then?" he asked. Her answer intrigued him. "As often as you want." Okay, he could play. "Will I see you next week?" "Oh my goodness, yes!" "Where will I see you?" "Anywhere you want to see me." He felt like a character in a Dr. Seuss children's book, being punished by being allowed to order anything on the menu, but not allowed to eat. He tried another tack. "When do you return to England?" "I am not certain." "When do your friends return to England?" "In 3 days." "Do they expect you to return with them?" "Yes." Suddenly it dawned on him that she, like him, was living in the twilight too. She had a way of turning her head to the side, smiling, and giving him a squinty sideways glance as she answered each question. It was driving him crazy. "Okay, you have answered every question I have asked." "Let's be practical for a moment, shall we?" "We had better. It is getting close to happy hour, and my 3 friends will wonder what happened to me." "Would you like to hang out on the dick for a while? No strings, honest." "Maybe I will. We will see. But you are on probation, you know." "I know. But what exactly is my probation?" "It is a secret, and I will tell you when it has ended." "You are better at living in the twilight than I am," he admitted. Her reply was inscrutable. "No, you are the professional. I am this student." "Say, is there a known time limit on my probation?" "Yes, thereof," was the only reply, and with a smile and the wave of an imperious arm, she declared question time officially at an end. Sea Dog was already in the dinghy, impatient for dinner. Before Ro leapt to the stern of the catamaran, she put her arms around him and gave him a hug. Her last words were, "Your probation is going quite well, actually. I checked off several items today." He smiled the smile of the ignorant. Oh, he has no idea there's a spreadsheet with tabs on him.